Warning. Listening to this show may result in increased levels of inspiration, motivation, and innovation. Side effects can include the immediate urge to take massive action to build a better business and life for yourself and others. You've been warned. Welcome to Influencers Radio with your host, Jack Mize.
And welcome back to another episode of Influencers Radio. You know, as President Theodore Roosevelt, who said, "Comparison is the thief of joy." Well, that was over 120 years ago, before radio, before TV, and certainly before social media. Unfortunately, it's human nature to compare ourselves to others, whether it's in business, the house we live in, the car we drive, physical looks, or popularity with others. And today, in the age of social media, the opportunity and temptation to compare ourselves with the TikTok famous, the YouTube famous, the Instagram famous has never been stronger or more overwhelming at any time in our history. And it's becoming increasingly evident that it can have a dramatic impact and effect on self-esteem, self-worth, and the joy of life itself. Well, today, my guest is Dr. Donna Rockwell, and she is the founder and CEO of Already Famous with Dr. Donna, a wellness movement for women and girls to cultivate self-confidence, inner worth, and meaning in life, which are the most important components in achieving happiness. And rather than focusing on external validation, Already Famous helps women and girls reclaim their innate power and actualize their inner celebrity. Instead of feeling like they're not good enough, Already Famous leaves women feeling empowered, unique, and significant in their lives. As a clinical psychologist for 20 years, a former producer at CNN, and author of the only published peer-reviewed study on fame and celebrity, Dr. Donna's message is loud and clear. You are enough, and you are already famous in all the ways that really matter. Dr. Donna, welcome to Influencers Radio.
Thank you so much for having me. It's just a joy to be here, Jack. Thanks so much.
Well, I am incredibly grateful to have you, because this is a topic that, it's almost hard to verbalize or put into words, when I think about this subject, because it's something that, anybody that's over probably 30 years old, they spend half their lives without such a thing as a social media. And it's something that's kind of, crept into our lives. But there's a growing group of people that it's been there their whole lives. And it's just part of life itself. And without trying to make social media seem inherently good or bad in itself, I think what you're doing is just incredibly impactful to a lot of lives. So I want to dig into that, right now, because the rise of social media has changed the dynamics and even the definition of fame. It's certainly lowered the barrier for those who crave external validation. So I'd like to kick this off by asking you, what kind of impact do you see this having on mental health?
Well, I think primarily, the statistics talk about women and girls in particular as giving away their internal way of seeing themselves over to this larger media entity. And, when I went to college 100 years ago, we looked at advertising and the role that advertising played in overtaking our mental facilities and faculties. Why do I want to smoke Marlboro cigarettes? Because there's a million commercials on TV about it. So media has always had this power over us, taking us in and making us actually want to buy this color or brand of lipstick, that kind of clothing line, because actually capitalism needs us to hunger for these things in order to continue to generate itself. So like you're saying, what I see mostly is that women and girls in particular, and boys too, even though it's at a lesser degree, keep comparing themselves to this device that is glued to our hands now. And you're right, we're in another whole stratosphere when it comes to the power that media, now social media we call it, has over us. How we think about ourselves. Are we kind to ourselves? Are we self-punishing? Is she thinner than I am? We all know that so many of these images are colored by filters that take out this line and that line and make us look different. And so the whole thing has become like a fallacy and a fantasy where we are hungering for something that doesn't even truly exist. So that's why I started Already Famous with Dr. Donna, just to reach out with some of these wisdom tidbits and understanding of how do I live a life where I feel fully embodied, that meaning I am enjoying my living existence, that I find meaning in what I do, that I can connect with other people and have compassion for them because I've already developed it for myself. So I know I'm going pretty deep pretty early, but really, if we're going to be happy in this life, we have to reclaim all the good stuff we had when we were young, when we were doing cartwheels on the front lawn, if that was the fortunate and privileged life we got to live, or any of the joyful pastimes that just made us feel happy to be alive. We're being robbed of all that natural joy and that natural, joie de vivre, as the French say, the just like love of life itself. And so I think, as you're pointing out, it's just so really important that women and girls have a place to go. I've started a Facebook group called the Already Famous Sisterhood, because I just want to have a community where we can talk about what's really important in life and how, yes, we are already famous in all the ways that really matter. It's our life, our particular existence, our fertile ground, our family, our futures, what we contribute to the earth to leave it a better place. These are all the activities that lead to fulfillment and joy, so that at the end of the whole thing, we can turn around and say, I did it good. I did it right. I did it in a way that I feel fulfilled by. And I think that's what we're looking for. That's the best we can offer ourselves in this life.
Well, that's why I'm so glad that you are here, because to me, just the pursuit of what you were talking about probably provides a lot of fulfillment in itself. And so that people don't think that it's all social media. Oh no, social media is going to be the ruin of us all, the end of the society as we know it. Well, the same thing was said about when mass printing became available. The printing press. The same thing was said about radio. The same thing was said when television came out. But I think the one thing that's different in social media is those did not provide access to the masses like social media does. And when you talk about enjoying ourselves, before social media, we weren't bombarded by what everyone we know and everyone that they know is having for dinner, or what they're doing, or what vacation they're on, or what they're driving, or anything like that. You're talking about that makeup and and advertising and how that has played a role. It seems like we would have learned throughout history about the fallacy of the illusion of perfection. Why is that illusion of perfection still so prevalent?
I think it's because our minds look to icons or heroes or something to aspire to. And interestingly, I just went to a wedding over in Italy, and I was at the Louvre in Paris. And I was overcome with this realization that if you look at the gods, Zeus, etc., as they were depicted in these incredible sculptures, we've always looked to that which is godlike or that which is perfect as something we love to gawk upon. We love to gaze at it. We love to look at perfection. And I think that's a natural thing. I remember when I wrote my college essay, I wrote it on Madame Curie because she was an icon to me. She developed the X-ray. She created these vehicles that went out onto war zones, and a lot of soldiers ended up living because of what she discovered. She gave her life up for it. So, here was someone that I looked up to. So we need that as human beings because we model after people. That's why we talked about Abraham Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt, as you say, who really planted the whole idea of the internet, if you want to think of it, because he's the one who spoke about rugged individualism and how, that was the American dream, to be up there in that horse and to be doing it all on our own. So we can look to him as well for planting these seeds of needing to strive to be the most unique and beautiful human being, rather than just seeing ourselves as a valuable member of the community. But where it comes in as so interesting is that social media actually provides not a nemesis, but an opportunity for us to bring things back to the basics. We talk about women and girls being on our cell phones all the time, and men as well, of course. But it is an opportunity for mothers to talk to their daughters about what's important in life, about let's go for a walk and talk about what's going on in your life. Let's go for a drive and a hike. There's so many opportunities for us to regain this sense of community, even within our own unique nuclear families, that social media, you're completely right, Jack, it is not the problem. It's how we engage with social media that's the problem. So I'm hoping that Already Famous will put the, relay baton back into our own hands so we can partake in this race in a healthy and successful way. So social media is an opportunity also for very lonely people to find other people to talk to, other people who have the same interests. Of course, in our polarized times, this can be incredibly dangerous, but it also provides solace for people who would otherwise be completely alone.
Well, yeah, I think that's why I think it's such a difficult argument either way for people that try to make social media sound inherently good or evil, because I think there's a lot of good that comes from it, like you said, and there's some bad that comes from, I guess, the way it's used. And to go back when you're talking about that perfection, about how the icons, the the Zeus, the art, Curry, and the history. I think the big difference is it took some legwork to get that icon status back then. It took years of sculpting to get that perfection. And now it's a matter of flipping on a filter, right? And I think maybe it's that ease of access and exposure that may be where the danger comes into this. So I think what I'd like to head down is how it's affecting a lot of our children, because it's to be able to hit that early on, and like you said, have those discussions, which seems like an easy thing to do, but the way that the brains are overstimulated, it seems, the dopamine the buttons is hit. It seems like that's what social media really seems to have a line on, is hitting the dopamine buttons. Do you have any suggestions or ways that parents can engage in those conversations, or not make it a struggle to be able to interact with their kids at that level?
Well, I don't want to put it back on the parents as where this all must begin, but even through all of time, our primary job, I think, as a clinical psychologist, I say, is to imbue our children with a value system that makes them good citizens and contributory to the world in a way that leaves it better than we found it. So that is still the job of a parent. And we really have to understand that we are modeling for our children with every single thing that we do or say. So what is it? Don't look at what I say, look at what I do. So a parent can't even begin to have a conversation with their child about overuse of social media if they, in fact, are modeling that for them. And I've seen it, quite frequently, that mothers and fathers will be on their phones at the playground, at the, dance class, wherever it might be, rather than actually being present. And one of my, I guess, joys or loves in life was becoming a mindfulness teacher and really getting into what does that really mean. And what that really means is being able to be right here, right now, rather than bemoaning something in the past or catastrophizing something about the future. And if we're, as parents, on our devices all the time, we're always either in the past or the future, and we're not present with our children. So honestly, I would have to tell you that I think that is the number one way to start to unpack this problem. And it is, as I say, to use this whole backdrop of social media to carve out a real life with our kids. Going for a simple walk is what creates bonding between parent and child. After dinner, go for a walk. No phones at the table, obviously, right? But it isn't so obvious. So I think it has to start with the parents who reconfigure what habits their household will support and which habits their household will try and mitigate and minimize. And it has to start with the parents. So that's first of all. And to have talks about this, it is our current birds and the bees, perhaps. We had to have those uncomfortable conversations with our children, or if we were children, with our parents. I remember my mother gave me a book that showed how animals had, how a cow had another cow, our difficult conversation. But this time in our life, this zeitgeist that we're living through, is rife with opportunities to talk about the important things. What do you want to do when you grow up? Why? What would you like to leave behind? Not did you see so-and-so and what she was wearing on her Instagram account, and to start having a dialogue with our kids about how none of this stuff is real. It isn't real. What's real is how much you love dance class, that you enjoy art, that you are learning so much in history, because history is so important. What does it mean to be a politically aware citizen in this country? There's so many things we could be talking about. And actually, those are the things that would bring us closer together, right? We all parents want their kids to love them and like them when they grow up. But every single second that we're with our children creates that platform, that structure for later. So I think we all need to come back to more mindful presence, actually, as the first way to attack this problem, and be with each other and put those phones away. Because, it's an addiction. It's actually a neurological addiction. As you were saying, dopamine starts pumping. We go into sort of that fight or flight response, and then we get addicted to that. So if our adrenaline isn't pumping, we feel like something's missing. And this can be quite the slippery slope. So modeling, managing screen time, encouraging meaningful screen time versus just killing time, like a time warp or a time suck, they call it, because just what's the most valuable thing we have in life? Time. And we're just giving it over to that device, not because we want to, but because, and here's the smoking gun, the algorithm is built so that we get sucked into that time warp. So to work against that, to disattach, if you will, to that kind of drug takes work. So I guess the whole country and the whole world needs to go into social media rehab.
Well, yeah, I think that's if there was such a place, I think people would sign up. But what's really fascinating is when you talk about that presence, being present, and that's, I think, the thing that's being lost, because I think there's a certain age of people whose brains are rewired. They're just wired differently. Because uh, people like you and a memory is something that lives in our head. But to so many young people, a memory is something that lives in their feed, right? That's what they see. And I think to a lot of people, they feel if they can't capture what they're doing, you talk about, putting the phones down, take a walk, to dinner without the phones. It's almost like they have this fear that if they don't capture it, it's not a memory. It didn't happen. Yeah, it didn't happen. But the sad thing is I see a lot of adults, even older adults, getting caught up into that trap. So I guess my question would be, what would you say to the parents that do acknowledge that they have to start with themselves, and they might find that it's more difficult than they thought it would be, because like you said, it is an addiction. It's amazing. You can't even go to a movies today without, if there's a lull in any activity, the default is pull out the phone. Let's see what's happening in the world. So if someone was to start with themselves, the parent, what would you see as what would be the place to start?
It's funny because, as you mentioned, that our attention span is getting less and less and less. I think it's less than 8 seconds now before we just start freaking out and have to look at something. So it is changing our brains. And this is my major concern with women and girls who are going to grow into, mothers and grandmothers and captains of industry. That's why I'm trying to intercede now so that they can reclaim how they direct their mind. Every single thing is a habit. So it's just a question of what kind of habits we want to adopt. And as you're pointing out right now, how then do we get ourselves to stop doing the things we don't want to do? And it's crazy, but I'm just going to come back to mindfulness again, because it's so funny. If we're present, we don't need that. So it's really like discipline, dedication, really caring about your life. Why does anybody go to rehab? Because they want their life back. So I guess for a lot of people, the suffering has to get to a point where they need to make a change. As a clinical psychologist, I'll tell you, there's something called the stages of change. There's pre-contemplation, contemplation, then there's the getting ready, the action phase, then the maintenance phase. So change is not something that just occurs. It's a process in itself. I think that, we went through times of prohibition and people couldn't drink, and then they could drink. And then now we have rehab. The Betty Ford Clinic is famous for saving so many lives. So perhaps we'll come to a time down the road a bit when we will have Betty Ford clinics for social media, because society will need it.
Well, I do think, yeah, I think it was very close, if not past that point, for sure. I studied some psychology myself, in college, and watching what you're doing and see the things you're talking about, brings back these memories of things. And one in particular was that whole concept of internal and external locus of control, right?
Mhm.
And so I see social media is not something that I think it'd be probably foolish and unrealistic for people to say, well, I'm just going to ignore it. It'll go away. It's there. You're not going to keep your kids from it. But so going into that internal and external locus of control, where do you start by allowing your kids or even yourself not to give so much weight to that validation that they seek on social media, or like you said, the algorithms? Because there are people that say, hey, what can I do? It's the algorithms. It's got me, it's too much. I can't, it's the algorithm's fault. That's why I'm like this. So what is it that you could do to uh, take back and create that internal validation versus putting so much weight in seeking that external validation from the people on social media?
Yes, well, great question, of course. If I had the answer, I probably would be to you because I'd be in my mansion at the top of a mountain somewhere. Because I mean, that's the $64 billion question. I'll just say that how dangerous it is that there was a study that was done that Facebook buried, and what the study revealed was that women and girls in particular, adolescent girls, who had bad body image issues already felt worse. A full third of the population of these girls who were studied felt worse when they were looking at Instagram. So there has been an increase in anxiety, depression, obviously poor body image, and even suicidality, means thinking about it, and additional suicide attempts. So trigger warning, this can be a slippery slope. And we read every week, Jack, about last week, a young boy, 9 years old, I think, committed suicide from being bullied, cyberbullying. So to your point earlier that we can never put this thing away, we can't ride our bikes home from school and hang out with our parents until we have to go back to school tomorrow. We are bombarded 24 hours a day. It really gets me upset because we have to come together as a nation and figure out how we can best address this. So how do we come back to a place where we have the internal locus of control, as you say, to say, I can't do this anymore, and taking back the locus of control from out there? My nieces went to a school in Texas that had like thousands of kids in it. So anytime they'd post anything, they'd have like 600 likes. It was unbelievable. 700 likes, 800 likes. And eventually, you start looking. You're hungry for them. As I told you, I just went to a wedding in Italy, and the driver who was driving us to the airport even told us that he didn't give his daughter a cell phone because he didn't want her to go into this whole thing we're talking about and be sucked into this comparison dynamic. And one day he was with his daughter and her friends, and he saw that one of her friends was there and was very upset. Why? Because she had posted a picture and no one had liked it. So this is in Italy, okay, talking to a driver. This is not just a problem in our country. It's a problem across the entire globe. And so I don't know, Jack. I don't know what the mechanisms are that it's going to turn it around. It's like Pandora's box. It's already open. But I guess it will have to come back to person communication, one mother being brave enough and strong enough to put her phone down during dinner so that everybody in the family has to put their phone down during dinner. And I think it will come to brave parents who say, I care more about my child than my addiction, and start working on it.
Well, I think that's incredibly powerful because I have seen, firsthand, friendships being damaged because of the neglect of likes, right? Which just blows my mind that something so trivial can be so important to people. And you brought up the bullying, and it seems to me that social media also is creating these fragmented personalities, that people are different on social media and they do things and say things that they would never dream of doing or saying face to face. It's almost like it creates this other personality, and people who may even be meek and timid in person become the kings and queens of unasked for advice on social media. Do you see that occurring in younger age groups, where they have these online personalities and their offline personalities that's tough to reconcile?
Yeah, I think that is what happens. And, we see with the anonymity that social media gives us, especially grown-ups, especially in politics, that we feel like we have carte blanche to just spew because no one can see us, or even if they see our name, people are getting more bold, aren't they? And to your point, it's just, we're not eye to eye. So we feel like we have permission to just, rant. But that can never be good, because when we get angry and our amygdala comes online, that's the fight or flight response. The amygdala is the most reptilian part of our brain. It's at the brainstem at the back. And when it gets activated, when we feel a sense of we need to survive or something's about to attack us, that comes online. And it starts pumping cortisol, the amygdala does, through our body, which turns into adrenaline. And when that happens, we do not have any access to our reasoning center, which is called the prefrontal cortex at the front of our forehead. Our pores open, our pupils dilate, because our brain is activated to the point where we think we have to get away from a lion in the jungle. We react that way if the light isn't turning green fast enough and we're late for a meeting. So we're like flooding our bodies with these fight or flight chemicals. And we don't have touch anymore with our more reasoned self, with our wise mind. And so that's why mindfulness is so important, because it does train us how to calm that part of our mind, that angry part, the I'm willing to say anything part, and activating our prefrontal cortex so we can have wise mind, wisdom, calmness. That's how to start to address this. And to your point, what should people do? They should go see a therapist, because whether it's a substance or it's gaming or it's gambling or it's the internet, we are still losing control over our main operating system, which is our brain. And we need to go and get help at reclaiming it. And sometimes we can't do it by ourselves, so we do need to go seek out help. And how can we start to do it ourselves? Understand that, what will I want when I'm on my deathbed? What will I want my life to have looked like? And if we don't start thinking like that, then we will just be like willy-nilly, as my kids say, drifting sideways through life. We need to have like a goal and an intention. And as parents, we need to model that for our children. So I think we're kind of going back to the oldies but goodies, like the golden rule: don't do unto others as you wouldn't want done unto you. And I think that main lesson has to come from parent to child, modeled over and over and over and over and over again.
Well, what I'd like to do now is uh, I guess we could blame social media, or, and that's that external, locus control. But let's go internal and go deeper into the whole concept of you're already famous, because to me that's really fascinating. And just to talk about your background, you have studied very deeply the whole the science, I guess you would call it, a fame of celebrity, which I guess by definition demands external validation. I mean, that's kind of what the whole thing is based on. But with the what you're doing and helping these women, these girls, to kind of flip that and bring that internally. Talk a little bit about your movement and how you are guiding them to look inside for that internal validation and place value on their experiences without feeling they need to compare them to what others are doing.
Yes. So I was one of the original members of CNN back in 1980 when it started. We were all young kids in our 20s, and it was really quite a thing Ted Turner did by creating this 24-hour cable news outlet with bureaus around the world. And so I was around a lot of famous people really early on, and a lot of people who I knew in the field became incredibly famous. So I got really interested in the psychology of fame and celebrity. And when I went back to get my doctorate, I was already 40 years old at the time. I took time off to be a mom for a long time, and I loved that very much. So maybe that's why I also feel that our focus needs to be on the children and how to help guide them as our primary job. And so I wrote my dissertation on the psychology of fame and celebrity. And at first I wasn't very empathetic, I won't say, to the condition. And then after I interviewed 16 A-list celebrities, of course I can't say who they are because there's that confidentiality in research. I will say that one person who begged me and said, "Oh, please use my name," was I interviewed child star Danny Bonaducci from the Partridge Family. So,
well, I'm definitely familiar with it. He's a unique individual for sure. I can imagine the information you got out of that one.
Yeah, he was great. He said, "I've been addicted to almost every substance known to man, and none is more addicting than fame." And when you think about it, your brain, as we're talking about addiction, your brain gets kind of used to all of this adulation, adoration incoming toward you, that people come up with what's called acquired situational narcissism, which means that even if you didn't have the early life disadvantages to develop narcissism, you could act that way or get it just from having too much fame in your life, because you forget how to look back out when all those eyeballs are just staring at you constantly. So it does change the brain. And the way this is all related to Already Famous with Dr. Donna is that is what's happening to the brains of all of these women and girls and young boys who are looking outside of themselves to see that they're okay, or seeking adulation. One of the extremely famous television personalities I interviewed actually looked out the window, a gentleman, and started crying because he was thinking about how hard life was going to be for his son, who would have to figure out how to feel okay about himself without the fame, without being this person, and a sense of kind of dread and responsibility for what was going to happen to his son. because there was no way he was going to grow up to have a spotlight like his dad did. And how do you guard against harm to your children in these sorts of situations? So it's really rife with a lot of complicated family concerns. And we're seeing, like, speaking about my nieces, if you're getting like 600-700 likes because of some cute pose you make, what does that do to your brain? You know, you're going to expect that forever. And then when it's not there, you're going to what? You're going to be depressed. And in my fame study, people who were quote unquote has-beens, who used to be somebody, they really fared the worst, because one superstar was walking down the street and someone came over to her and said, "Hey, didn't you used to be?" And then said her name, like she didn't exist anymore.
Oh, wow.
Exactly. And so what happens to famous people is they start feeling objectified and depersonalized. They lose their sense of trust for old friends and new friends. One of the great quotes is from a incredible actor, Broadway incredible actor, who said, "Fame is like a bloated cod sitting on the table between he and his friends." And another very famous writer said, "Fame is a very untrustworthy dance partner, and you can't trust anybody who came to you through that dance."
That's incredibly powerful. And it just made me think the way that it's the potential damage is even more potent for people that get a taste of that fame. Like you said, even if it is the 600-700 likes, because I think about it in terms of like finances. Very few people jump off a building because they never made $1 million, but lots of people have jumped off buildings since they lost $1 million, right?
Yes.
So it sounds like that's getting a taste of it and then it not being there. And I think that there's nothing more truer than fame is fleeting, right? No, it doesn't last forever. And I can imagine that damage is so much more debilitating for those who have actually experienced it. When you're talking about the gentleman that was in tears because his son not, guess what? 99.9% of the world has never experienced fame and gets through life just fine. Do you have people in your group that have experienced some level, even if it's that internet famous, or even if it is that one viral post, and then you've seen the depression that's come in once that dies down?
Absolutely, yes. And that is the problem, is that what was revealed in my study, which is called Being a Celebrity, and it's available online. If you just Googled Being a Celebrity and my name, you could find it. It's in the Journal of Phenomenological Psychology, written up. But that is what's happening, that same dynamic, to, yes, an influencer who's 23 years old, who had 3 viral posts and then nothing. And that person already has a neural structure that is yearning, dendrites and neurons firing, wanting a connection that's not happening. So I really think that this problem is underestimated, even by the broadest standards I think we're starting to see as we're discussing it here, than even any media outlets are talking about. And that my hope with Already Famous with Dr. Donna is to at least create a tribe of women who can reclaim this sense of agency. This is my life. This is how I feel. I'm not comparing myself to other people. I am my own person. I'm unique. I'm a flower that no other flower is like, and I love myself. I appreciate my life. I appreciate getting born. I feel the breeze. I remember when I was a kid getting on my red Schwinn and riding down the street and feeling the breeze on my face and thinking, I'm so happy just to be alive. And that's what I'm hoping to bring back to these women and girls, is to remind them that it's just a privilege to be alive and to be healthy. And there's so much to enjoy. The leaves are changing color. It's a miracle. The whole thing is a miracle. And if we are not present to that, there's only two other places we are. We're either bemoaning the past, regret, etc., or we're catastrophizing or worrying or projecting into the future. So if we can, a lot of what I present, if you look at my Instagram, Facebook, YouTube postings, you'll see that it is all about how to reclaim that, how to be in this moment present with myself, how to calm myself when my mind gets too busy, how to breathe properly so that my central nervous system is in a good place. Everything comes back to the body in the end. Like if you're looking at reading some of the oldest Buddhist psychology, they talk about the fact that the first foundation of mindfulness is mindfulness of the body. That's why feeling our feet on the ground, feeling our breath going out and coming in, seeing the red of the leaves in the tree as fall comes. These awarenesses of our five senses, they're called the five sense gates because they connect us back with life. Our senses, they're gates to existence. If we can stop thinking, let go of the past, let go of the future, and notice what's here right now, the purple of the violet, the beautiful resonance that you have in your voice, Jack. It's lovely to hear. It's melodic. And to be present with these tiny awarenesses, that's joy.
That's powerful. I know it's a contradiction, but let's hope uniqueness becomes a trend.
Exactly. That's what we need to do, Jack. We just need to create a new commercial about how unique you are. And quite frankly, if you look at companies like Dove Soap, they are really embracing this notion of the unique self, body positive. They have, all kinds of shapes and colors and beings and abled and other abled. And however I am is beautiful because, I'm not a religious person, but we're all children of God. We are perfect in the image that we are. And I think that our challenge is to embrace that and not to listen to external validation, not to look outside, but to say, like, no, darn it, this is my body. I'm beautiful. And I have, something to tell all women and girls who are listening. I had such a hard time with myself when I was in high school and when I was in college and I was too heavy or I was too this or I was too short or my hair was too red or I had too many freckles or whatever it was. And I saw a film of when I was in my 20s a few years ago. And I could not believe how pretty I looked. I was like, I didn't even know. I just looked like a beautiful young girl. But boy, you couldn't have convinced me of that then. So I just want this movement to be a breath of fresh air for particularly women and girls who are so hard on ourselves to embrace our face, embrace our body, love the reflection in the mirror, and go out in this world and make it a better place. The famous people in my study who fared the best, who survived fame most, were the people who saw fame as currency that they could spend to make the world a better place.
Rather than defining who they were, it was more something that they could use to better themselves. Yeah, that's
better the world. Matt Damon did a whole water thing in Africa, making sure that African tribes deep into the land were getting fresh water. And he used all his money and all of his position. Look at Sean Penn. I mean, he has used his life. Bono, it is done. It is really done. And there are celebrities that model that, and they're the ones that are actually happiest. It's not another mansion. It's not another plane. It's making sure that people on the plane feel good and have just the most basic needs met. And if more people thought that way, saw famous currency, saw all of this as a way to contribute back, everybody would be happier, because the real thing that makes us happy is service to others at the end of the day.
Well, that's so true. And I think there's probably a lot of people out there like me that before discovering you, felt the pull of what's happening, with social media, felt but just couldn't verbalize it, couldn't put the concept into a language. And you've done such a beautiful job of giving it a voice, or giving it a name, that I think a lot of people think, yes, okay, that's what I'm experiencing. That's what my child is experiencing. That's the fear that I can't define for my child. And you've been able to define that so well, and not just define it, but also provide a path to understand it, and to, like we said, it's not inherently good or evil. It's just the way that you use it. And I think that's one of the most powerful things that you're doing. So how can people join the revolution? How can people, find out more and become a part of what of what you're building there?
Well, first of all, they can go to my website, alreadyfamousnow.com, because we're already famous now in all the ways that really matter. I just as a quick aside, whenever we'd go and visit my grandparents in Miami Beach, my grandmother would fling the door open to her 3 grandchildren, and she'd say, "Oh my gosh, look who's here. It's my celebrities. My celebrities are here." So we have to realize that the people in our lives are really our celebrities. We are celebrities in our family's life, and we can reclaim that. So alreadyfamousnow.com, go to my social media pages of Instagram, Already Famous with Dr. Donna on Instagram and Facebook. And there are daily sayings, clips that I've recorded on all the things we've been talking about today, looking at how fame is addressed in the media today. So it's very current, all those posts. And also on YouTube, Already Famous with Dr. Donna on YouTube, where all my videos are stored so people can go see them there. And also, we're starting to build a sisterhood, the Already Famous with Dr. Donna sisterhood. So you can join that on Facebook and become part of the community, as together we reclaim this innate self-confidence. It's already in us. An inner worth that is always there and always growing. It's just covered over with the media saturation. And one thing I want everyone to understand is we are sitting ducks for media, whether it's 1953 or 2023. We are sitting ducks for media because we are constantly fed by it. Remember, television was called the idiot box?
Yeah.
So we are just like at the whim. So we need to have as good social media hygiene and media hygiene as we have with our teeth. If we can floss every night, we can put our phones away while we're having dinner. We need to really be in our own movement of reclaiming our power. And our greatest achievement at the end of the day is to have a fulfilling, joyful, and full life.
I think that when you paint the bullseye around that, then it's I think it's a target that anyone can see as worthwhile, for sure. And when you talked about that, about how celebrities to your family, That certainly is the truth. And it reminded me of I know that it's a kind of the irony of what my grandmother used to tell me is, Jack, you're special, just like everyone else.
Exactly.
And so I think, that's just what I find so wonderful. And I would encourage everyone to check out your site and your videos. There's just not just a wealth of knowledge, but a wealth of insight. And it's impossible for someone not to watch and listen to what you're doing without it, becoming introspective, and for them to really be able to apply that to themselves. So I have to thank you for being here and sharing this information, because I think it's going to have a tremendous impact on a lot of people.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Jack. And at my ripe age, I feel like there are these nuggets of wisdom that oh my gosh, this is so incredible. Oh, wow. I wish everybody knew that. And I've collected all of these kind of road marks that have helped me on my life. And I am hopeful they've helped all the people I've spoken with over the past 20 years in clinical psychology. And there are just very clear ladder rungs that help us climb to our best self. And that's one who accepts our full self and feels a sense of self-love and self-compassion. So I'm hoping that my movement will do that for other people. And I get to share in this sense of generativity of, talk about a currency. All these things I've learned are currency, and I want to cash them out and pass them on to other people so that they can reclaim this gift, really, which is life.
Well, yeah, you definitely have a clear path for that. And I just think a lot of people will resonate with this and find themselves being very thankful to have stumbled upon you. So once again, thank you. We could do this for hours because there's so much that can be gone into, but I think that people really definitely get a sense of what this could lead to. And I think it can lead to a very, very powerful revolution. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jack. It's been just a pleasure to talk to you today.
All right, folks, there you have it. Definitely check out Dr. Donna. Check out alreadyfamousnow.com. We'll have the link right there on the show post, along with the link to Dr. Donna's social media links, because like we said, it can be used for good. It can be used for bad. And I think you know exactly where you're headed when you go to see what Dr. Donna has to say. So until next time on Influencers Radio, remember, you are the only real game changer.
You've been listening to Influencers Radio. To get all past shows and updates on future shows, visit influencersradio.com today.